Building. Building completed.
Global conflagration. Conflagration. Okay, let's see now. Where to buy extra large hang on, wait, what was I doing? Oh yeah, conflagration. Better type that in.
Conflagration.
Global Conflagration is a real-time strategy game being developed by 2 developers calling in air support from freelancers where needed. The game has been worked on for almost 10 years in some shape or form, and by all means, less is so much more in this case. Now the date for the early release is still to be determined, but it's not far away now. And I'm fine waiting however long it takes, as long as early access is value for money. So we're going to take a look at Global Conflagration, and I'll try to help you decide whether or not you should fork out some cash money when this game enters early release. Is it just another cash grab like Commanding A? I won't go there, but I'll provide some thoughts, comments, and experiences. I'll run through some of the aspects of the game and what I've learned. So let's take a bit of a deep dive or a look into Global Conflagration. As my dear lost friend Yukon would say. So now we're going to start off with this awesome Camo Editor, which is a fantastic addition to any RTS game. It allows you to customize your unit's appearance, and I'm happy to see this. If you want your units to be suited up for a rave on a battlefield, well, you can. If you want your units to be that classic camo, you can. There's an insane amount of variable configurations here, and it's an awesome addition. Now, this process is going to be streamlined, and further patterns and things will be added as time goes, but for now, you can apply one camo to infantry vehicles, aircraft, and structures. Structures obviously showing less camo, which is good, of course. But in the future, they're planning to make it so you can have a different camo for, say, each category. Your infantry, vehicles, aircraft, and buildings could all have different camo at some stage. Of course, you can save your camo skins and you can use them in multiplayer mode, which is wicked. And it'll be difficult to have a player who picks the same skin as you, as you'll still need to pick a color, which will still be notable in your camo, but doesn't change it drastically. There are 3 completely unique factions. And what hit me first was the striking distinct detail of each faction's structures and building animation. You have the more modern Advanced European Defense Union, or EDU, which have an elegant, intelligent design. You'll note the use of solar panels and hybrid diesel engines, which are integrated into some of the building designs. And the buildings themselves look very futuristic, slick, but to the point. In stark difference, you have the Vanguard, basically your Russian faction, which is a tremendous classic faction to include from an RTS perspective, and I'm really glad to see this. The Vanguard is a completely different sight to behold. Very much a classic Soviet-era industrial appearance, which takes me back to the Red Alert days. You won't find solar panels here. It's still coal and diesel, forged like times past, that echoes in the building's design here. Then comes my favorite in terms of structure aesthetics. Really reminds me of Bioshock crossed with GLA, and that's the Carpathian, a rustic steampunk design where it actually looks like they're using fire, steam, and heat to power their war efforts. You can see nearly all the buildings are using pipes and old sheet metal banged together, which is true to the Carpathian theme. Carpathians do not have one source of origins, but are a collective of ravagers using whatever they can find to construct their buildings and units. This is pleasantly reflected in design and look of the Carpathian structures. The structures are glorious in this game, and I really like the fact that just by looking at the buildings, you can almost establish that each faction is using a different energy source to power their war effort. I really enjoy this idea, whether or not it was intentional. It's a masterpiece in design, and keeps the factions very uniquely divided. And also, just by looking at this building, gives you a lot of insight into the faction's story and history. And the animations are no exception. Keep in mind with a small team, you have to make very critical decisions on where your time is spent and what to do. And with a skeleton crew, this game to be top tier, given the disadvantages in manpower and funds. Lots of detail and moving parts as these buildings rise up. The unit design has the same level of thought and detail as the structures, each carefully designed reflecting the faction's power source and the means of gaining materials to wage war. You'll find the rich and comfortable EDU having stealth technology that can be fitted to a light, speedy tank as well as aircraft, like the stealth bomber that packs a devastating blow. EDU uses advanced weapons and technologies to gain supremacy, having units that evenly balance between speed and armor, coupled with deadly technology. Another important aspect that sets EDU apart is the Armory Building. If you've ever played Command & Conquer Generals or Zero Hour, the EDU Armory Building acts a bit like the USA Strategy Center. You have 3 different options, and you can only have one switched on at a time. However, you can change your selection, but it will take time. The 3 options are Intensify Economy, which grants a 10% increase to your income. Increase Intelligence, which increases your unit's vision by 20%. Improved Assembly, which decreased build time of units and buildings by 20%. Very powerful and unique aspect to EDU, which ties in really nicely with their advanced ecosystem. Meanwhile, Vanguard have some realistic Russian vehicles, tanks and artillery. These units will be familiar if you've ever played the End of Days mod. Russia has strong air support, and not to mention the crazy huge bomber that will level your units. Also included is the beloved double-barrel heavy armored tank, which is one of the main themes with the Vanguard. Slower, heavy armored vehicles with excellent air support, but weak to anti-air. One of the unique aspects of Vanguard is you have to upgrade your technology from your command set at a cost. This will allow you to progress and build more advanced units. The final level is Tech Level 3, and that will grant you access to all units in the end. The Carpathians are known to steal technology, so you'll find a bit of a mixed bag of stolen tech slapped onto their units. Stealth stolen from EDU and fitted to what looks like a very nicely designed quad cannon. Tank armor and tank parts scavenged from Vanguard, and some really old school looking aircraft, as Carpathians have a limited technology. But they do have the iconic Blimp of Doom that is strapped with a ludicrous double barrel anti-tank gun, packs a serious punch, and can take a bit of damage as well. Carpathian accessed their technology levels by purchasing advancement upgrades on individual buildings, which allow new advanced units to be purchased. The Carpathians' main theme is fast and hard-hitting units, good for hit-and-run kind of tactics. Not to mention they also have a demo truck, which is pure gold and so much fun. For now, the 3 factions also have one specialized infantry unit. EDU have the Bastions, a soldier implanted to an exosuit and armed with a grenade minigun that can take out buildings fast and does a bit of AoE damage. Vanguard have mortar infantry, which have excellent range and deal nice AoE damage. A very pesky unit to sit behind some double-barreled heavy tanks. Carpathians have snipers, which can get upgraded with a stealth pack. So you end up with stealth snipers, which will suppress infantry forces on the battlefield with excellent range and decent movement speed. All factions have access to artillery, and at the final tech level, each have some devastating units. Also worth noting is that all factions can purchase helicopters and specialized unique upgrades from the helipad looking building. I guess this makes sense as the parts and components would be transported by air to location. The air control tower building will allow the construction and control of aircraft such as planes, blimps, fighter jets and bombers, depending on which faction you choose. The mechanism of using air support in this game is slightly different to others, but is the same across all factions, excluding the blimp, but we'll come back to that. You first purchase your aircraft, and after construction is complete, you can call them in by clicking on the aircraft or bomber icon on the left hand side, and then order a strike on the map. You can select the aircraft before they attack the target. Doing so will redirect their fire or attack, but in all cases, once your aircraft unloads their bombs or missiles, they will fly back towards your base and off the map to refuel, reload. And after a cooldown period, you can repeat the process. Aircraft are devastating, and this refueling method is a nice way of balancing out the destruction. Plus, it makes it all more important to hit critical targets and to be more mindful of how you use your air units. Now, you do have a generous but limited time to use your aircraft once you've ordered them into action. So say you've ordered a stealth bomber to strike, then you cancel that strike by clicking on the aircraft and clicking somewhere else on the map. Your bomber will just fly around as you haven't given a command to unload onto some enemy targets. But after a while, your stealth bomber will head back to your base to refuel and to reload with a cooldown. So make sure you use them once you've called them onto the map. Once you call them onto the map, you will basically have full control, but once they've unloaded, that's it for them. They'll have to head back. Note that the same refueling and cooldown does occur with 1 or 2 helicopters from memory, but it's the exact same principle and mechanism, so no worries there. Now, the Carpathian blimp is awesome as it doesn't need to refuel ever, which makes it even more satisfying to use. But keep in mind, Airdrift is a real thing as well. So if you have your blimp or helicopter sitting in one place for ages and you come back and they're not there, it's because they've drifted across very slowly. So just keep in mind, your helicopters and blimps will slowly move from their position as they drift in the wind. So this is just a really high level overview of units, and I'll cover this in more detail down the track, but it's the main mechanics I wanted to cover in detail. And we're going to take a quick look at the maps. The maps are extremely immersive and drastically different depending which one you select. You go from lovely bright farmland to a beautiful calming storm. That has windmills and cracking lightning that might make you shit your pants if you're caught off guard. Then to muddy, damaged terrain to June 2000 type maps. So a really nice mix and a lot of contrast between the different maps. The maps are nicely balanced, but you'll always have a map or two that is more favorable, but I haven't noticed one yet. And definitely my favorite map so far is the farmlands. It's a really nice experience, and honestly they've done a really nice job with the maps. Now while we're talking about the maps, there are some really quirky things that are worth mentioning, which I honestly love when things like this are left in the game. So you have all these props like cars and doodads, tractors, carts. Your units and buildings can kind of interact with them, but they're indestructible, which means they have some unintended consequences. Like when you go to construct a building on top of a cart, the cart can get stuck and rattled around, or a car can sit in front of your tank on its turret or in some really unusual places. Your vehicles can kind of also bounce around off these objects. It's definitely a bit of extra fun while you play, but something to note that I'm not sure will change, but it's fun, so I hope they leave it. One thing that's been supremely designed is the shortcut key system. I won't go too much into it, but if you've ever played Red Alert or General's Evolution, you'll find a really simple and effective hotkey system. It's super slick and easy to use, it makes for really fast micro potential, and it's going to be insane watching people play this at the pro level. Be like mad scientist smashing away his chemical formula on a typewriter, because you know, us gamers, we have to have those mechanical keyboards these days. We've taken a high level look at the buildings and units, so let's look at the guts of it, the most important mechanic to understand when starting off. And that's the resource aspect to this game. Resources are not collected, but rather generated via what is called an expansion point. At a high level, there are two types of resource generators, and one means of cash infusion. We will cover the quick stash cash a bit later. For now, we're focusing on the two main income generators. When you load into the game for the first time, on the minimap, you'll see a closed circle, and these are the points called strong points. They look like this on the minimap and like this in the game. The second income generator are called checkpoints, which is represented by a flag on the minimap. They look different on the minimap, and this is what they look like. Now there is a third expansion point called a logistic point. You'll see it on the minimap represented as a cross with a circle with an X. These points do not generate income at all, but can be captured and upgraded with an outpost, and that allows you to build a second base. Okay, so how do we generate income? Generating income can be done by using units to capture and control expansion points. Any ground unit can take an expansion point by being in the circle area as long as it's not occupied by an outpost. The outpost will have to be destroyed before an expansion point can be captured. And note that aircraft cannot take control points at all. Once a control point is under your control, it will change to your color selected for the game and will generate steady income for you as long as it maintains under your control. So what's the difference between a strong point and a checkpoint? So both strong point and checkpoint generate income, but let's start off with explaining strong points. These points are almost always closest to your base and provide the most income generation potential in early game stages. So it's in your best interest to take these points first and upgrade with an outpost as soon as possible. For example, strong points will generate 14 by default, whereas checkpoints generate 10 for the first 5 minutes by default. You can increase the income on strong points by building an outpost. That yields an additional $14, so you'll get up to $28 every tick. By tick, I mean every time you see that number appear above the expansion point. Ticks every second or so, and this number indicates what you're getting from that point, whether it be an expansion or strong point. Now you can upgrade strong points by adding a fuel station to your outpost, which grants an additional 14. So now you've reached the maximum income of a strong point, which is 42 every tick. And again, this is because you have an outpost and an upgrade called fuel station, so not bad at all. Now checkpoints are different in a couple different ways. Checkpoints are less focused on economic advantages and more to aid in warfare and map control. However, checkpoints still generate income, but it increases differently. Income generation from checkpoints is completely out of your control and is determined by game time. So to put simply, checkpoints income generation increases in 5-minute intervals. What this means is all checkpoints on the map for the first 5 minutes will produce 10 per tick, then at 10 minutes produce 15, and so on. Checkpoints can produce a maximum of 30, which means 20 minutes of game time has been reached if you see that figure. So just to be clear, income generation on checkpoints is automatic and linked to the game time. No outpost or upgrade will increase income on checkpoints. It's all automatic and controlled by game time. This allows you to make other critical decisions on how to use checkpoints, as they serve many other purposes. Let's talk about the cash infusion. Checkpoints offer a secondary way to gain additional cash infusion. Let me walk you through the scenario for what is termed bounties in GC. It's a pretty cool, neat feature. Okay, so let's say you get beat hard, but you manage to recapture a checkpoint from the enemy. Well, not only do you get the checkpoint, but by capturing a checkpoint from the enemy, you also get a bounty. Bounties are a one-time cash injection rewarded for capturing an enemy checkpoint. The amount of a bounty is completely determined on how long your enemy maintains continuous control of a checkpoint. As an example, you finally capture a checkpoint after it's been held by the enemy for say 50 minutes. Well, in that case, the cash bounty is going to be pretty damn sweet. But if you're constantly exchanging control over a checkpoint, the cash bounty will be pitiful. The aim here is to provide an excellent way for comebacks and to help the underdog fight back. You'll see this figure on control points near the base of the flag. This is a cash bounty amount. It will continue to increase all the way up to a maximum of 2,000, so some huge rewards granted when you take back control of checkpoints that have been held by your enemy for long periods. An excellent little function, I reckon. We've mentioned outposts a lot, but let's go into a bit more detail. Outposts are probably the second most important thing to understand. Each faction has a different outpost unit that can be built from the command center. Outpost units is always the very first slot on your command center. EDU have a pioneer, which basically has no other purpose or use than building outpost. Vanguard have a Halo, which is a multi-purpose helicopter that kind of looks like the Russian Mi-26. A unique attribute to Vanguard is the Halo can actually deploy multiple outposts by resupplying from a command center. A very cost-effective process, however, Halos are a bit slower. Halo can also transport one unit, and in fact it can be ready with an outpost and carry a ground unit at the same time. There is no drop or pickup animation, which makes this a particular dangerous special trait to Vanguard that cannot be taken lightly. Carpathians have the battle bus, which can transport 2 infantry units. Now, it's important to note that units can't fire out of the battle bus, unfortunately, and it's only for transport, but it's still pretty deadly, especially when you're not expecting it. Now, there are some upgrades you can add to Outpost. Fuel station, supply depot, and crane are all available upgrades for an outpost for all factions, but there's a bit more to it than that. An outpost on a strong point only allows the building of a fuel station upgrade. However, checkpoints can have supply depot and crane upgrade, but you can only select one of these options, and fuel station won't be available. So say you get a supply depot upgrade, that will increase your support point limits, but once you've purchased that upgrade, you can't change your mind and then get the crane upgrade on that outpost. Outposts have to be destroyed and then a new one built if you want to change your selection. But hey, there is force fire, so you could always try kill it yourself if you needed to. So choosing the crane upgrade will allow the constructions of buildings in and around the checkpoint. Handy if you want to get to your enemy faster or build up a defensible area. And as mentioned, if you construct an outpost on a logistic point, you can only get the crane upgrade. That will allow you to build a second base. Now note, outposts will change a bit by the time early release arrives, as there will be more diversified and possible options. I'm not exactly sure what that means or what it'll look like yet, but maybe each faction will have a unique upgrade option. But yeah, again, we'll have to wait and see on that one. Moving on to support points. You'll find support point on your heads-up display here. You'll notice the number increases automatically as the game goes along. Supply points can be exchanged to call in things like Tomahawk missile, artillery bombardment, or a repair drop. Basically like general abilities that can morph and change the outcome of battles. How and when you spend your support points is going to be a critical thing to victory or also your demise. Another way to spend support points are using units with special abilities. An easy example of this is riflemen can build a trench, which will cost you support points each time you want to trench your riflemen. So be careful, don't do what I do and use trench and then untrench expecting to be able to trench again right away, as you may be out of supply points. Why can't I? You can increase the production of supply points by building power plants. Power plants will add an additional 2 points per tick to your support points. But don't worry, we won't go into too much about what this means, as this number is subject to change and we'll cover it later. But just know that power plants are good, they will increase your production of support points. The other way to gain support points is to pick up these green looking symbols, which represent rescuing injured personnel. For every second vehicle destroyed, a green thing will be dropped where they perished. You can walk or drive over them to recover some command points. And as mentioned, you can increase the maximum limit of your command points by purchasing the supply depot upgrade on your outpost. GC, as it stands right now, honestly has the potential to be a well-regarded, immensely enjoyed, and fiercely competitive RTS game. I haven't played a new RTS and look so forward to it to being released for some time. The game is well thought out and extremely addictive, But it's not going to be at the same level as some of that AAA bullshit. And let's face it, AAA games have been letting us down constantly recently. So don't worry too much about that aspect. It fits really nicely together to make for a wicked and fresh new experience of an RTS. It's the most CNC Generals game I've played in some time. But at the same time, it's not CNC at all. Somehow the RTS loving devs have managed to capture and pack some of the best parts of RTS and then blend it into their own unique spin, which I honestly didn't think would work. Like having expansion points which generate income, I thought that idea would suck. But holy fuck, in fact, it's a freak of nature. Having these points keep you so busy and enthralled with the match. Meanwhile, you can't spam tanks like a bot and expect to have a good outcome. The game dynamics and resource management is dependent on map control, the game length, and most importantly, how you micro your units and support points. Constantly trying to outmaneuver and displace your enemy while building and managing multiple points on the map makes for a really action-packed game. The pacing in GC is really unique and strange, but really refreshing and different. You don't end up with a mass horde of army very quickly. The engagements are smaller on scale and more important to think outside the box. Like knowing that your enemy is here, but it's actually more important to know where your enemy isn't in order to capture unguarded at checkpoints. The amount of possible strategies and build orders seem freaking endless for me right now. So I'm so keen to get stuck into this and develop some serious annoying rushes or total tactics, which anything is possible. To simply put, this game is absolutely worth buying for early release. It's exactly what it should be, an RTS developed by true RTS fans over many years. But now we're close to early release. We've all been conned, or at least I've been conned too many times into buying absolute trash bag games claiming to be early release, but they just had clever marketing. But I've also had some really pleasant surprises, say like June Spice Wars. That was an excellent game for early release. Now it's changed a lot since its early release, but I guarantee GC will be a pleasant surprise. GC is worth chucking some money down to play to get a breath of fresh RTS into you. I don't think you'll be disappointed, especially with the price. The pricing is going to be roughly between 15 and 25 euros, which is roughly 16 to 27 US dollars, which nowadays is just a couple cups of coffee. Thanks inflation, I think for this price, given what is planned to be delivered for early release, it's a no-brainer for me. The release date is still to be determined, but it's definitely closer than you might think. But here's what I know to expect for the early release. GC's early release will be packed full of new things. We'll have a bit of an introductory campaign. I don't think it'll be the complete finished campaign, but it'll definitely be a good chunk of it. There'll be skirmish of course and multiplayer of up to 8 players. There'll be more maps, more unit abilities, new game mechanics, and many quality of life features. So overall, a well-rounded state of game for an early release, especially when compared to other nightmares I've forked out money for. It's been a while since I've enjoyed an RTS like this. The units, buildings, maps look absolutely stunning. The game feels a bit like Command & Conquer Generals to me, but at the same time, nothing of it. The game mechanics are well thought out, and it's not a game where you can just spam one unit like many RTS. It has its really own unique pacing and feeling. It's a bit hard to describe, but it's a glorious RTS. I definitely have to recommend purchasing this for early release. Definitely let me know what you think so far. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey, and bomb that subscribe and like button, please. Peace out, legends. I'll catch you.